Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel M Stewart Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to learn how to paint a gorgeous sunset beach with a person surfing. So let's get into it. So a really nice and easy tutorial today. You're going to need the following colours. They're titanium white, cad yellow, matte orange, rose pink, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, iris purple, raw umber and ivory black. Now I have a burnt sienna stained canvas that I've used cobalt blue to create an outline. I've got half the painting as sky and half the painting as the beach and some mountain. I've got put the sun here to the right. We're going to have a sunset reflecting down onto some wet sand. We're going to have a little bit of cliff tops and sand dunes in the far distance that we're going to use colour to push back. We're going to have a dude, a surfer, going into the water. We're going to have this lovely wet shiny sand that we're going to create a light effect reflecting the sunset, and then we're going to have darkened corners. So if you'd like to pause the video and copy down the outline, feel free to do so, and away we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to block in the right hand corner with some sand. So we're going to mix some raw umber brown, some orange, a little bit of black and some cobalt blue. And we're going to try to create a dark grey, and it's a bit too harsh, so we're going to add some white and we're going to try to make it a bit lighter in colour. And we're trying to get this sort of pre-mixed grey that I've got here. So a little bit of black, a little bit of brown, some orange and some blue with some white. We should get this nice gunmetal grey. Now we're going to paint a really nice pastel sunset, but what I want to do is I want to create a nice dark grey in the right hand corner for the beach, for the sand. So by using a dark colour, what it does is it not only frames the artwork, it frames our painting, but also we've got a clear divide between the shimmering reflection of the sunset on our wet sand, and we've got this nice dark sand, so we've got this nice contrast. So I'm just going to use this dark sort of grey just to block in the sand up here and just create a nice definition between what is the beach and the sand and what is the wet shimmering sand. So it's a bit dark, and what we're going to do is we're going to add some blue. So we've got it already mixed. We're just going to add cobalt blue. Now cobalt blue is fantastic for creating things that are far away, such as mountains or canyons or cliffs. So what we're going to do is just by adding cobalt blue, we can create some far off cliff tops, and we can turn these later with some detail into sandy dunes. So all we're going to do, we're just going to use this lovely cobalt blue to our grey and push back these mountains using the colour. And then as we move away to the left hand side, it's going to get lighter. So if you think the canyons, the cliff tops, excuse me, are quite big and they're quite near to us, so they're going to be darker in shade, and as they move to the left they're sort of fading off and getting smaller, so they're fading off into the distance. So to do that we're just going to add lots more white and a tiny bit more grey and a little bit more cobalt blue just to push it back. So we're just making the lighter shades. So look, we've got a darker shade and a lighter shade. So the darker shade brings things forward and the lighter shade pushes things back. So look, by just using a lighter shade we can make that look further into the distance, and you can do this with anything. So if you want to paint a far away mountains or anything, just add a little bit of blue, a little bit of cobalt blue, and if you want it really far away just lighten the colour up, and if you want it closer towards the viewer just darken it up. So a really easy trick that you can use at home. So we've got our blocked in cliff tops, and we've got this lovely colour that's tricking your eye. So now we're going to work on our sunsets. So the first thing we do is just go get a big dollop of titanium white and create a big circle here on the right, and that's going to be our sun. So after you have blocked in your nice big round white circle, we're going to create a hot colour to create the glow around the sun. And because we're doing a pastel sunset today, we're going to use rose pink and cad orange, or you could use matte orange, which I'm using, and we're going to add white to that. So orange and pink to make it really hot and electric. And then we're just going to tiny bit of white, just so we've got a nice striking colour. And even though it's a bit bold, we're just going to block it in, and then we'll lighten it up in a minute. So this is just a nice sort of glow around our setting sun. So we're just going to create a big ring shape around it to create a circle. So super easy. And then what we're going to do, we're going to use the same colour. We're just going to load up our brush, and we're just going to create some clouds just coming either side of the sun, and just having them fading off into the distance. So it's a bit harsh, this colour, so we'll lighten it up, because as I say, we want to make it nice and pastel, this sunset. But it's good, just a bit like the dark blue outline, it's good to just lay the colour on first, and then we can sort of doctor it and change it to how we want it. So what we're just trying to do is we're just trying to sort of block in the painting and sort of get everything where we want it. Now we're going to make a nice lavender light purple. If you haven't got iris purple, because it's hard to get, you can just use purple and cobalt blue, mix the two together, and then add lots and lots of white, and you should get this lovely lavender colour. So purple and a little bit of cobalt blue just to make it more bluey. Add lots and lots of white, and you should get this colour I've got here. And all we're going to do is at the top of our painting, we're just going to make, again, we're just going to frame it. We're just going to make the corners nice and dark. So we've just got this nice sort of pastel purple, very nice and cool. And we're just going to block in the top of our painting just to frame it. So there we go, easy peasy. Just come down a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to just go over the top. So I'm just going to get some of this pastel purple again. I'm going to add a little bit of pink to it just to heaten it up. And a big dollop of white just to make it less striking. We're just going to add some more white. So all we're doing by just adding little hotter colours in the pinks, and by adding plenty of white, we're just going to make a nice pastel sky colour. So all we're going to do is just block in right down to the horizon, all the way up to those cliff tops. So we'll just block in the background sky. So take your time. Don't worry if you go over your mountains or anything, or the clouds. We can neaten it all up in a minute. So we're just going to add more white to the mix and make it really pastel now. So it's just lots of white with a hint of purple and a hint of pink. And then in the middle, we're just going to make it a shade lighter. Just going in towards those clouds. We're just gently blending it into the darker shade at the top. So if you just load up your brush, and then look, just gently, just go back and forth, hardly any pressure. You can just blend it into the dark shade as it goes upwards. So there we go. And then what we're going to do, we're just going to dry our work with a hairdryer. And then now it's dry, we're just going to rework everything and just make it nice and neat because it looks a bit scruffy. So all we're going to do, we're just going to get a big brush. We're just going to make sure the top is nice and covered in our purple. So just by adding a second layer of paint, you can get rid of any horrible brush marks. You can also cover up any of the horrible background canvas if your paint was too thin, because you can see where you've missed. So I'm just going to darken up my corners with this nice lavender colour. And then I'm just going to get the bit of orange and a bit of pink to make that hot pink we had earlier. So that was the colour we had to create the ring around the sun. But I'm going to add a lot more white this time. Because even if you add loads of white, it's still pretty harsh, this colour. So look, even though I'm mixing, orange is really overpowering. It's a really overpowering colour. So make sure you add loads and loads of white, and we'll make it a bit more pastel. So that looks nicer, doesn't it? It's not as harsh. And by using a more pastel colour rather than a darker colour, what it does is it pushes it back more. We don't want a really harsh colour in that orange because it will bring it closer towards the surfer. So by using a more pastel sort of peachy colour, you can make it look more subtle. But look, as you can see here, even when it dries, it will dry quite harsh. So we just need to maybe put a bit more white in it in a minute. So all we're doing, we're just making sort of big chunky cloud shapes. There we go. And then we're just going to get plenty of white. A tiny bit of that lavender and a tiny bit of that orange. And then we're just going to lighten up the sky around the clouds. Just with a second coat of paint. Oops, got something on my canvas here. Bit of dirt. So there we go, we're just going to make the horizon nice and faint, just so it looks like it's all fading off into the distance. And then all I'm doing, look, I'm just gently going over the clouds with this colour. I'm just sort of glazing over the top of it. Can you see that? So I've got hardly any water on my brush. Just got a really thin amount of paint. I'm just going over the top. I'm almost like colouring it in. And what that does is, because that colour, as I say, as it dried, look, it's pretty harsh, isn't it? And it's too far forward. So just by going over with this lighter colour, look, you can still see it, but it's just pushing it back into the far distance. So look, just glaze over the top of it, almost like you're just colouring it in. And we're just pushing it back into the distance, so it's not so harsh. We're just blending into that darker purple. See how that works? So we're just trying to work on all our transitions, make sure they're nice and soft. So look, round here is a bit too harsh. Look, we'll just go over the top of it. Just here, just going to blend it, just so it looks like it's all fading off into the distance. So there we go. So we've got this nice hot colour and we've got the background sky now. So what we're going to do, we're just going to work on the transition on the clouds. So with a smaller brush, I'm just softening up areas and just painting in some little wispy clouds. So around the sun, it's a bit too circular, so we'll neaten that up, we'll blend it all. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just creating shapes of clouds. Can have ones breaking away over here onto the left. So I think let's have some that are just a bit lower at the bottom here. Just make these edges just a little bit softer, just so it blends into the sky a little bit more. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just taking a colour of the clouds and I'm just gently sort of shading around it. So look, especially around the sun, that circle's really too harsh. So look, just going around the edges, just soften them up, make them all wispy, all cloud-like. And then we'll poke holes in the clouds in a minute with the sky colour and make it super realistic. But first we just want to make them nice and soft so they look like they're all blending. So there we go, we can have a little bit coming around here. And then look, let's soften this up. So what I'm doing, look, I'm pushing down really hard and I'm just making that edge look a lot more softer. Look, push, push, push. So just blending that, making it look, the transition look really nice and soft, just so there's not this harsher glow. So there we go, that looks cool. So that looks really, really nice and it looks really far into the distance. So now we're going to get our white and a little bit of the purple and pink, and we're going to poke holes in the sky to make our clouds look super realistic. So now we've worked on the transitions and we've got the colours bang on. What we're doing now, look, we're just poking holes and creating shapes. So I'm just using some of that sky colour to sort of fill in little gaps. And this is what tricks the eye. So look, we can have little holes, sort of go along, make these clouds look like they're sort of fading off into the distance. So this is a really, really easy trick. We do this a lot in the tutorials where we just poke holes to create shapes of branches or leaves or clouds. So you can use this over and over again. So once you nail the transitions, then you can go back like we're doing now and just poke holes in the sky just to change the shape of your clouds to make them look more realistic. So we could have little gaps up here. So they look like they're all breaking off into one another. So this is cool. And all I'm doing, I'm just using my finger just to soften things. So where there's a really hard jump from one colour to another, all I do is just use my finger just to sort of blend it. We're just going to make this transition into the purple a little bit less harsh by just poking some holes. Look, just soften it up just by pushing down, look, and just glazing over the top. So there we go. This is such an easy technique once you know how to do it. You can do this on any sky. If this was a blue sky, you could do it. If it was a red sky, whatever you want to do. And then I'm just going to get a little bit of white. And I'm just going to make my sun a little bit more circular. It's a bit big. So I think what we'll do is we'll make it smaller in a minute. But that sky is starting to look really cool now. Look, now we're poking these holes through it. It's pushing it back and making it look really cool. Our sunset is looking awesome. And it's all in the colours. So we're going to get some cad yellow and lots of white. So cad yellow and lots of white to make it nice and buttery. And then we're just going to make this colour, which is called Naples yellow, which basically means a pale yellow. It's basically a nice pale yellow, sort of a colour of butter. And all we're going to do, look, we're just going to go around it and create a glow. As I say, we'll neaten it all up in a minute. And then just some of the holes that we poked, we're just going to shade them in a little bit with this light yellow. Just so it looks like some of the glow from the sun is creeping out through these clouds. Some of that heat. So again, by using warm colours such as yellows, oranges, pinks, you can imply heat. And by using cool colours such as blue and purple, you can imply coolness and shadows. So just off camera, I'm just adding a little bit of pink and white and orange together. So the same colour as we used for the clouds. So pink, white and orange that we used previously. And all I'm going to do is just, now we've got that yellow, I'm just going to smudge it while it's wet and just create a glow. Look, just going around it in a circle. So with some pink, white and orange, and then just go back to my Naples yellow and then just make that circle, look, that glow just while it's wet, just blend it into each other, just so it's a lot softer. I've got a harsh pink bit here on the right, so we're just going to soften you. Look, there's nothing you can't fix. Look at that. We're just going to smooth it again, just make the transition really, really smooth. So there we go, just got this nice little yellow glow coming through the clouds. Super easy. So just put a little hint of a glow just here on this right hand side. Just letting the paint run off my brush. Just gently glazing this area. So I think that looks fab. So we've got our nice sky, and we're just going to get some white. We're just going to mix it into our orange and pink. So lots of white, some orange and pink. And we're just going to make the horizon just a tad lighter. Just down here. Just as a clear definition between the clouds and the cliff tops. So all I'm doing is just going right up to the edge of the cliff tops. I'm just making that horizon, because it's got a bit of white in it, just a shade lighter. Just so there's a nice definition. The horizon's always the lightest colour. So say you were painting a blue sky, you want the base where the sky meets the land, you want the horizon to always be a lighter shade. So because we're doing a pastel-y pinky colour, we're just making that horizon nice and light, and then we're just using that colour just to blend into that yellow, just so there's not such a big a jump. So there we go, just blending it in. Same here. And then because this is nice and cool, this nice purple we've got here, and because around the sun's going to be really hot and warm, well, if you imagine on the left hand side it's going to be a bit cooler. So by just using the colour that we used right at the top, which was purple and cobalt blue and lots of white to create that lavender colour, we can create sort of low forming clouds just here at the horizon. And then we can just have some ones that are just sort of floating away here on the left hand side. And it's really subtle. It will dry a little tad darker. And then just on these clouds here, we could just glaze over the top and just make them a bit cooler. So if you imagine on the left hand side, you're getting less heat from the sun. So by just using that purple, we can just go over these orange clouds. Look, just glaze over the top with this lavender. Just shade them in just to make them look a bit cooler. It's a really easy trick. If you just think around the sun, it's going to be really vibrant and hot. And then here off to the left is just going to be a bit more cooler in the shade. So just by adding purple and white, we can just imply that. And look, we're just gently blending it. So our sky looks fantastic. Our sunset looks really cool. So I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with the colours and how it looks all pushed back far into the distance. So you've got this nice transition from the clouds to the sky. So now we're going to work on our cliff tops here. So we're going to zoom in for you. We're going to get some cobalt blue. And sorry, it's a bit off camera. I think I zoomed too far in. All I'm doing is mixing some cobalt blue, some raw umber brown, and a little bit of white. So cobalt blue, some raw umber brown, and a little bit of white. I'll show you in a minute once my pad gets out the way. And all we're doing, we're just making that grey colour that we made earlier. But I haven't put as much orange in it. So cobalt blue, raw umber and white. So here we go, we've got this nice grey. And all I'm going to do, now we've got that cobalt blue, I'm just going to add some detail over the top. So we're going to try to create the impression of sand dunes and sort of cliff tops. So by just using a lighter grey, we can just, because it's got plenty of white in it, we can just create the illusion of detail. So what we're doing, look, we're just putting some texture in. We're leaving plenty of gaps so that dark bluer colour can shine through. So all we're trying to do is create the illusion of texture. So these are sort of all the sand dunes that sort of come up and meet all the rocks. So you get that nice sort of texturized look. But it's still quite in the shades, because if you think this has got its back to the sun. So we don't want it black, we don't want it silhouetted and be really harsh, because we want to use our blacks in the foreground to bring them towards the viewer. So by using greys, we can make it look far back. Now all I'm doing is just add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white to our grey. So it was cobalt blue and brown and white, and all we've done, we've added a tiny bit of yellow and some white, and I'm adding a tiny bit more cobalt blue. But by adding yellow and white, still got some cobalt blue in it, I'm just making it a shade lighter. So as I say, as we move towards the left, obviously these sort of cliff tops are fading out into the distance. So just again, we're doing the same technique, just adding texture, but we're just using a lighter shade just to imply some sunlight and also to imply that it's fading off into the distance. So this area, you're probably getting a tiny bit of sun. You're just getting a little bit of texture. So just using this nice light colour. So you can have these sand dunes coming right up here. So look, I'm just leaving gaps so the underpainting can shine through. Just blending it in with my finger. And then we're just going to get some raw umber brown and some cobalt blue, just to create that dark colour again. Just add some white just to make it less harsh. Just going to add a tiny bit more brown. So just got this dark grey again. We'll see. No, it's still too similar. So the good thing about testing with these greys, you can see you can come over and add things and you can see if it works or it doesn't. That grey is too similar. So look, by just adding more brown and more blue, see how dark that is? Just adding brown and blue and no white, you can almost create a sort of subtle Prussian blue, like a dark blue. So we're just going to put in some divots and some texture here, just using a fine liner. So by using this darker blue, it brings the colour and it brings these cliff tops closer to the viewer. So I'm just using my finger just to smudge them because I don't want that colour to be too harsh. I want to still push it back. So look, when I'm laying it down, it looks quite dark. So just by squidging it over with my finger, it just takes a bit of the harshness out. So look, it's very harsh. So look, just rubbing it with your finger, just pushes it back a bit, takes a bit of the colour out. So there we go. Just adding this illusion of texture. And then we can get some of that light grey that we used and just have a little bit where the sunlight is just hitting onto that sand as it comes over the top. So that is looking cool. And this should be all dry now. All our sky is nice and dry. So we're going to get some pink, some orange to make our hot colour, and we're just going to add a big dollop of white to that just to make it more pastel again. So plenty of white, pink and orange, and we should get this nice peach colour. And then what we're going to do, we're going to block in some of the reflection on this shiny sand. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to match the colours in our sunset on here and now on the floor. So we're trying to think of a mirror, think of glass. That sunset, the exact colours are going to be shining onto this sort of wet sand. All these big waves are smashing into the beach. So all we're doing, we're just using this colour just to block it in. We're going to leave a little bit gap. We're going to come up here, because we want to have sort of a shimmer effect. So I'm just leaving a little bit of a gap. I'm not going right up to the edge with this nice pink, because I want to create a nice cool outline. So here in the middle, this could be all like a reflection of these lovely sunset. So there we go, that's all blocked in. Nice and easy. Let's have a little bit going through the surfer, coming out the other side. There we go. So all the colours match. So now we're going to mix a really nice cool blue for the ocean. So we're going to get cerulean blue and cobalt blue together. And we're going to lots of white. So cerulean blue and cobalt blue. And we're going to make a really pastel blue. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue, lots and lots and lots of white. And we should get a nice pastel blue. So here we go. I've got a clean brush now. My other brush was a bit mucky and it was getting a bit grey. By making cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. And if you swap to a flat brush, what's really, really good about a flat brush, it's really, really easy to paint straight lines. It's got a nice flat head. So for creating sort of shimmer on wet sand, it's really, really easy. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just creating flat lines. And I'm just going back and forth like zigzaggy with this really nice pastel blue. And I'm just creating a nice edge. Now, as I said in many of the tutorials, sometimes you're painting, especially with acrylics, unlike oils, it will dry a bit flat. So at the moment, look, we're adding this pastel blue. Because it's so pastel, it's almost, it looks see-through. It's almost like it's not attaching to the canvas. So a lot of times with acrylics, you might have to go over it twice, just if you want it that vibrant. So all we're going to do, look, we're just going to come here. And we're just going to block in this area. Just colour in our ocean water. So this is all the sort of shallow water that comes onto the beach. And then we'll colour in here where we're going to have some really big surfer waves, some really choppy waves. And our dude could be like Point Break or something. With Bodhi going out to sea. Johnny Utah. Man, I like that film. So we're just creating the colour, the sort of underpainting colour for our ocean. We can have it coming up here, sort of joining into the sand. And the great thing about the cobalt blue, look, you can still see the outline. So even though we're painting over the top, we can still see the outline of our nice surfer. So now we're just going to get some white, and we're just going to load up our flat brush. And while it's dry, we're just going to go over the top, and we're just going to create a bit of a shimmer. So if you imagine the sun is directly over the top, this right hand side is going to be getting really sharp sunlight, and it's going to almost create a really sharp shimmer here onto the wet sand. So I'm just using that really sharp flat edge of the brush. I'm just mixing it in while it's wet. But as I say, it looks a bit flat simply for the fact that it's one layer of paint. But look, what you can do, look, you can do this. We can just create straight lines going through your orange with this nice pastel white colour. And that again creates the shimmer effect. So it looks like wet sand, look. Just by doing lines. It's not hard, look. Just do little straight lines. Almost little diagonal lines, excuse me. And look, you can just soften it up like we do with our fingers. Look. You can do it the other side, look. Just create these little zigzags. And it just looks like the water is retracting back and it's leaving like a shimmer. So I'm just going to make this edge a little bit more blue. It can be sort of a wave, and then look, just create some lines, just so it looks like the water's shimmering. And then put some white up here. So you can see, look, now it's starting to dry. Once you put a second layer of paint on, it looks much more vibrant. So you can either just work on areas, like work on different areas where other areas of the painting edge drying, or you can just, if you're really impatient like me, you can just use the hairdryer and then just dry your work, and then when you reapply paint, it doesn't all merge together and get all mucky. It's much more vibrant. So I'm just getting some white. See, look, I think because it's still wet, look, it's just not taking as much. It looks cool, but it's not really bright, is it? So all I'm doing, look, I'm just using that flat edge of the brush just to create these sort of splats, so it looks like the water's peeling back. And then here in the distance, I was going to create some sort of like foam where all the waves are sort of crashing into the cliff tops. So I was using some of the sky colour, which was purple and white. I was just using my finger here just to soften it up. But I don't think it looks very nice. I think it looks a bit weird. So we'll let it dry, we'll have a think and come back to it. So I'm just getting some white here. I'm just creating some sea froth here. So now everything's drying, you can sort of work out your painting and see where you have to change bits. So we can just get pure titanium white, and hopefully this area is a little bit drier. And now when we get over it, look, the white is starting to shimmer now. It's starting to look really vibrant. So I keep saying to you in all the tutorials, with acrylics, unlike oils, where the oils are super vibrant, being the texture of the paint, acrylics, because they're water based, sometimes they're just not too vibrant. So just by going over the top, we can make them look much better. So we're going to stick with our flat brush, and while that area is drying, we're going to get some black and lots of cobalt blue. So a bit of black and loads and loads of cobalt blue, and we're going to make a Prussian blue. So Prussian blue is just a posh word for dark blue, and all we're going to do is use that really flat edge again, just like a fine liner, and we're just going to create the illusion of waves. So we're going to paint just some flat waves here as it joins into the beach. So if you imagine, this is sort of like the water as it retracts back, and you get these really shallow waves. They're about an inch, and we can create a nice sharp edge here, just so there's a bit of definition. And the reason we're using a dark colour is to bring this closer to the view. So by using this really harsh colour, it makes our wave look like it's close to the viewer. So we're saving our darkest darks here in the foreground. And what you can do, look, you can use this colour to create stones and pebbles in your beach. You can use it to use texture. So just like we did with the faraway sand dunes and the cliff tops, we can create the illusion of detail with this darker tone. So let's have some of the waves coming up through here where the surfer is. So let's create big waves coming up here. So joining onto the beach. So there we go. If I zoom in for you so you can see a bit better. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create much more harsher waves, because if you're a surfer, you want really big waves, don't you? So we're going to have big wave coming up here. And then where these ones, because it's shallow, they're quite flat. As you go out more into the sea, they're going to get really, really choppy and get much larger. So the ones closest to the beach are going to be flat, but the ones that you want to surf on, they've got kind of a triangle sort of shape. So what we're going to do, look, we're just going to create sort of a Toblerone shape, like a triangle. So look, we're going to go up at an angle and then come down to create little sort of camel humps, if you see what I mean. So look, we're going to come up and come down. So come up, come down, and create these sort of little sort of harsh bobbles. And then underneath, we're just going to create some wash. And then we'll have more sort of a thin outline here as it comes into the beach. We could do little added bits of detail. So you can either use a fine line, or I like to use the really sharp edge of this brush just because it's really, really thin. It's really, really good for straight lines. It's excellent for drawing things like tree trunks and buildings, things like that. And then look, we can even have some debris and bits coming up onto the beach. So again, we're just using our darkest colours here in the foreground to bring it closer to the viewer. So I'll zoom back out for you in a minute. I'm just going to darken up this corner. And again, just smudge it. It's a bit too harsh, isn't it? And what we can do is we can texturize this part of the sand dune with this nice dark blue. And just add a little bit of detail, look, just coming down, just to bring it closer to the viewer. So we're just shading it. If I zoom out for you, look, now you can see. So just be using this darker colour, we can bring it real close now. So you can add little bits and bobs. This could be little bits of debris, rocks. So if you try to think, you don't want to use anything like blacks or anything unless it's really, really close to the viewer. You want to save all them. Okay, so we've got this dark sort of really choppy waves, and then we're going to have waves that are a bit further out here towards this far away cliff top. So we're going to mix our cerulean blue and cobalt blue and white to get this color, and then all we're going to do, we're going to mix that into that Prussian blue that we just made. So we're just going to take some of the lighter blue we made and add it to the darker blue, and we're just going to create a sort of mid blue, sort of a bridge tone. And all we're going to do, we're going to use that as a bit of shadow colour, and also to create some waves that are off in the far distance that aren't as harsh. So if you imagine, look, here in the far distance up here, there's still going to be waves, but they're not as close to the viewer, so we're not going to use as dark colours. So same technique, look, we're just using that outer edge of the flat brush, we're just creating lines basically. And then also here, look, we can create some shadow for some of the wash with these big waves. We can create some shadow down here. Just so we've got a mix between bright highlights and cool shadows. And I want to make this corner a little bit darker. So this left hand side a little bit darker because obviously it's getting less sunlight. So look, just on the left, we're just making it a little bit darker here. We're just shading it in a bit. Because this side's going to be a little bit cooler. We're going to sign it down here. So we want it a little bit darker, just so our signature pops. And then if I zoom in for you, we're just going to get some of our dark blue and black. And we're going to get a fine liner, and we're just going to put a silhouette of a guy surfing. So it could be a guy or a girl, whoever it wants to be. It could be yourself. You can put anyone in. So all I'm doing, I'm just using that nice dark silhouette colour. I'm going to make my person quite chunky like me. So I'm going to make him quite big. Here we go, and he's holding his board. My guy can have baggy shorts like me. And then his leg, and a little foot. And knobbly knees. With my Bermuda shorts. And my chicken legs. There we go. That looks cool. And then what we'll do, our surfboard looks a bit rubbish. Well, that's dry, and we're just going to get some of the shadow colour. And we're just going to block in the surfboard. So let's just make that a bit better. So if you imagine the surfboard's white, but because he's got his sort of this back end of the surfboard will be getting no sunlight, we're just going to paint it this sort of bluey grey. So we just try and create this sort of shark nose, if you see what I mean. Sort of nice rounded nose, and then the same on this side. Just make it a bit larger. Create that sort of nice rounded edge. There we go. I don't want to make it too big. He could be a beginner. He's got a little baby surfboard. There we go. So it's nice and blocked in. And then we're just going to get some of that lighter blue, which was cerulean blue, cobalt blue and white. So the same colour that we were using to block in the ocean. And just on this tip, if you imagine this tip would be sort of getting the sunlight. So we're just going to make this area a little bit lighter. So just blending that in. And then if you think, just here, be just getting a tiny bit of sunlight. We'll see how it looks. We can play about with it. Sometimes with these tutorials, because a lot of them I'm painting out in my head, you've got to sort of figure out stuff, and it's not till you go along you see if it works or it doesn't work. So we'll see if that looks cool. So just gently blending it in. I think the paint's too wet again. It's just not taking. It's a bit lighter here at the front. And then the opposite, this area would be a bit darker. So we're just using a darker grey, just by having less white. And just giving this bottom edge a little bit of a silhouette. So that looks alright, I think. But I'm going to darken up here while it's dry, and we'll have a think. And what I'm doing, I'm just using some black and blue. I'm just doing the reflection here onto the shimmering sand. And I'm making it deliberately squiggly. So I'm not just doing a pure reflection. Look, I'm doing little zigzags. I'm leaving little gaps. So again, it looks like it's shimmering in the wet sand. So it looks like his legs are reflecting. And then I might use that colour just to make this area a bit darker, because this is really going to be in the shade, isn't it? And his arm would be sort of cast in the shadow, wouldn't it? So, but I think it's still wet, it's all merging together. So we'll leave it for a minute, and we'll get some black and blue and go back to outlining this area. So we're just going to make this area look a bit nicer. Why don't we have a nice sort of bits of detail? So look, we could have, just by using a fine liner, look, you can have little dots and pebbles and things, sort of breaks in the water. So what I'm doing, I'm just letting the paint run off my brush, just using it just to create little dots. So look, little dots, just to look like detail. And again, just using a fine liner makes it so much easier. If you've got a really tiny brush, you can do this really sharp detail. Now I'm going to get my flat brush, and I'm going to get some of our Naples yellow, which was yellow, cad yellow and white. And just under the sun, I'm just going to make this area a bit brighter and a bit matching the sunlight. So I'm just using some cad yellow and white. And I'm just creating a nice glow coming down here on this shimmering wet sand. So again, all the sunlight matches. And I'm going to get our cool blue. And now it's dry, I'm just going to go around the edges. just make them all a bit sharper. So again, it's just the same techniques over and over again. By just going over it twice, you can just make all your painting look much more vibrant. And then this area is going to be a bit more in the shade. It's going to be casting the shadow here, where the water sort of comes in. Just lighten this area up a tiny bit. Yeah, I still don't like the sort of cliff tops. I think it looks a bit scruffy. So if we make the horizon look, we make the water a bit straighter. And we'll get some white, pink and orange. So white, pink and orange. A bit more orange. There we go, let's go back to our original colour. And just because it's got a lot of white, look, we can just put some lines coming through, just so it all matches. So think of what I was saying earlier, we want to create sort of a mirror effect. So this is sort of the sky colour. So we've got the sort of harsher, warmer oranges for the clouds. We've got this nice yellow of the glow from the sun. Now we've got this sort of really nice pastel peach colour. So our beach sunset is starting to take shape. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm just going to go through his outline. We can repaint him in a minute. I'm just putting some of these shimmers through his legs. And I'm just going to get pure titanium white now. I'm just going to load up my flat brush. And then just here, look, just on these outlines, I want to make them really, really bright. So this is sort of the glare from the sunlight. So if you imagine that really, really strong sunlight, it's almost like a torch, would be beaming down just directly down here on this right hand side. So by just using this really powerful titanium white, we can create that shimmer. Here we go. So as I said previously, as it dries, you can just go over and give it a second coat. We can, this edge, you get the frothy edge of the water. Sort of the shimmer here. And then a little bit underneath here, just to lighten it up. Just underneath here. Again, just there's a bit of a gap between the water. And then I'm just getting some pure white and a fine liner, and I'm just coming down in between the shadow colour. I'm just creating some of the wash from the wave. So these really powerful waves are going to be really, really striking, really, really high. So I'm just using some white just to create that. And because we've got the darker blue, the grey blue underneath, it looks like a nice contrast between highlights and shadows. And then let's add some little detail here. So it's all starting to take shape now. I think I'm going to make this edge nice and rounded, just so it looks like the water's retracting back. So if I put a bit more water on my brush, I'm just going to make this area look like a bubble, like a nice rounded soft edge. So there we go. So it looks like the water's peeling back. So just create little bubbles and divots just to give the water texture. Just so it's not so flat, just makes it look like little caps of waves. And then a little bit over here. Just as a nice definition between the ocean and the beach. Going through our server. And then we're just going to get some blue. And some of that purple and white. And a tiny bit of brown. So purple, blue, cobalt blue, purple, a bit of brown and a bit of white. And we're just going to create a nice shadow colour. I'm just going to make, because it's a bit more purpley, I'm just going to make these edges a bit more harsher. So I think just to make them look a bit nearer and a bit meaner, I'm just going to add a little bit more of this purpley blue and just give the edges a nice silhouette. So again, I don't want it too dark because that sunlight sort of beaming down on it. So that nice purpley colour just pushes it back. That purpley blue. And now it's a little bit cooler. So that looks better, I think. Yeah. So let's make this edge nice and harsh. So all these cliffs sort of fading out. And then we're going to stop as we move right. And we're going to do the same trick as before. We're just going to add some more white to the mix. And we'll test that out first. I think that's a bit too white. So I'm just going to mix a little bit more of the shadow colour to make it a little bit darker. So just mix the two colours together. There we go. So less white. And that's better. So we're just trying to bridge the two colours. So we're going from really cool purpley blue just by adding a little bit more white to the mix. It will dry darker. They always do acrylics. So let's make this edge, these cliffs, look a bit more interesting. They're a bit flat, so let's make them a bit more bobbly. So you don't want it really square and straight. Look, we're just going to make them all different heights, little dips and stuff. We'll come down to that ocean now. Just smooth it out. There we go. And then just to work on the transition here from the cool to the light colour, I'm just going to blend this a little bit more. So just going between the two colours, just making this transition look really subtle. So you barely notice the changing colour. Looks really natural. There we go. And then while we've got that dark purpley blue, why don't we use that, now this is dry, for the back of the surfboard to make it more silhouetted. So that is much cooler. So all it was cobalt blue, a little bit of raw umber, a bit of purple and white. And then we can use some white on this edge. So one side's highlighted and one side is cool and in the shade. There we go. So while he's drying, we're just going to get some white again. We're just going to go over the top. So I know it's repetitive, but it's just to get that vibrancy. So we're trying to get this shimmer just here on the right. But the cool mountains look much better, I think, now. So it's nice shimmer with the white. And then we're going to get some cerulean blue and purple. So cerulean blue and purple. Got a little bit of white and a tiny bit of brown. So cerulean blue, purple, white and brown. There we go. I'm just going to make it a nice cool grey. So I still don't like this bit of the surfboard, so I'm just going to make this a bit darker. There we go, that looks cooler. That looks better. And then what I'm going to do with that colour, I'm just going to come out from the beach and I'm just going to make the beach a little shade lighter and just have a bit more sort of sand coming into the wet sand. So I'm just going to poke some holes, just like we did with the sky with the clouds. I'm just going to poke some holes into this wet sand and just make it look a bit nicer. There we go. That looks cool. And then we're going to add some footprints. So I've got some black and blue, got a fine liner. And all I'm doing, I'm just doing random shapes either side of one another, where he's been walking through the wet sand. And he's made little divots for his footprints. So going off towards the left side of the painting. So just try to leave little gaps either side. Just do little splodges. These could be his footprints. And then what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to actually use black. And I'm just going to go over the top of him. And I'm going to make him much more silhouetted so he stands out more. I think now we've got that cool bluey browny purple as on his surfboard. I just want a different colour. I want to make him a bit darker and bring him towards the view a bit more. So just adding some black, a tiny bit of cobalt blue, but more black than anything. It will make him silhouetted. I'll just put a tiny bit on these edges, just to make them really harsh. Again, just to bring it towards the viewer. And I'm just going to get some black while I've got it. I've got to get a big brush. I'm just going to darken up the corners. So just here, this is going to be hardly getting any sunlight, because this is going to be really far away from the sun. So it's almost going to be silhouetted. So again, it's just to frame the composition. And then the opposite, just going over our whites again, just making them brighter. This is a way you could cheat with oil paint, because oil paint is so vibrant. You could use a tiny bit of white oil paint over the top here, just to make your work. But this is an acrylic tutorial, so we're going to stick with acrylics. But you could do a little cheat and use a tiny bit of white oil paint. And then lastly, we're just going to get some yellow and some pink and some white. So yellow, pink and white. And we're just going to make this area, now we put the white back in, we're just going to make it again just a bit more yellowy. I think my brush is a bit mucky. Made a boo-boo here. I think my brush is a bit mucky. So what I would do, unlike me, is wash your brush and just make your yellow a little bit brighter. I think mine looks a bit manky. Yeah, and I think this pink and orange is way too harsh. I think because my brush still had a bit of that purpley grey that we just did, I didn't obviously clean it a bit. I think just going over it with some white and some yellow, just going to make it a little bit lighter. What we're trying to do is we're trying to go from that orange and pink into yellow and then into the white. So look, if we go over with the yellow just to make it a bit more vibrant. So you're going from orange and pink. So if I mix some orange, pink and white back up. So in the middle we're going to have orange, white and pink. And then we're going to have yellow. And then we're going to have white. So just create that shimmer on the right. So there we go, just put some lines, see we've changed it. And I think she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learned how to create a silhouette of a surfer, and because we've used the black, we've brought him really close to the viewer. You've learned how to use purples and blues to create shade, but also to push your mountains and cliff tops back. You've learned how to paint sand. We've got our darkened corners. You've learned how to create distance, and then how to have these powerful waves. You've used colour to create a lovely light horizon. We've got the glow around the sun, how to poke holes to create clouds, how to darken up the top to frame the composition. You've learned how to do these powerful waves, look, and bring them closer to the viewer. Just like we've done the texture on these canyons here by using the darker colours. And then we've got the lovely shimmer in the water, and we've got this lovely dark silhouette of a cool surfer dude, and this lovely bright shimmer coming down. So all in all, a really easy sunset beach acrylic painting tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. My name is Murray. We have plenty of tutorials here now on my channel, so please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to tag me at mstuartpaintings with your version of the tutorial so I can shout them out, and I will see you soon for the next painting tutorial. Take care, bye.